Hey, welcome to Small Towns Unscripted, Arnold Baker.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is Nicole Turner. I'm Russ McClellan. Have you seen any of these episodes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got so much content there. It's going to take me a while to work through that as being a recent one. But I got to see Sue Baker's, and that was a great.
She's great. She's just cool. There's so many cool little characters. We just had like some of our favorites, like Carol Ools. She was a character.
Yeah, Carol was great too.
Yeah, we've had a lot of 60.
So many of them were.
64 weeks in a row or something like that.
Yeah.
I want to commend you at capturing this piece of history.
Thank you.
And I wished we could have had our dads and to capture what they had to say.
Yeah.
But we lost a generation, and I'm glad you're not letting another generation go. So
thank you.
Keep on keeping on.
Yeah, we like to share why we do it, and it's kind of this idea the town's changing all the time, always has changed. Since COVID, it's changing a little more rapid than it once did as people are able to work from home, and so there's more and more new blood coming to town, and we're trying to unite people, so we feel that if you get to know people instead of just of them, everybody has a story, and we've all been through things, good and bad, and that commonality sometimes leads to a little less judgment when you realize, oh, I get that. I've had something in common with someone. And to your point, the other reason was just to capture the authentic stories for families. We love it when the grandkids go, Grandpa was on a podcast, how rad's that, or the great grandkids that aren't even born yet that will be able to look back with this technology and say, hey, that's cool.
But there's a piece of Manson that those of us that have grown up here, that if we don't tell it, that's lost.
For sure, yeah. Well, we're sitting in Chris Cruz's Valley Barber, so we want to thank Chris because this is he's an amazing guy and right here in the heart of Manson, and we appreciate the opportunity to sit in a barbershop and I'm not getting a haircut today, but he does work on my beard once in a while.
Well, okay, we got a saying is we call it hairapy. So you get haircut and therapy, so we made the word hairapy.
Yeah, and while we're on that topic, before we dive into he's a chaplain with the fire department.
He's the chaplain with us, and he helps us out a tremendous amount. We love what we're doing is serving our community in the fire service, but when things don't go well, then you're dealing with the family stuff, and that is another skill. Chris has it, I don't. And so to be able to talk the family in a tragic situation, we're just not trained for it. And Chris took the time, and we supported and paid his way to make that happen. But what he provides us is a tremendous service. So we're grateful for all he does.
So if you want a haircut and therapy, come to Valley Barber. That's how it works.
There you go.
Therapy.
Therapy. I love it. All right. Well, let's talk about your roots, my friend. Let me read this. Talk about the fire department. Your family story goes back almost a century here.
We're creeping up on the century. So, that is pretty cool. On the lake, when they were putting in the dam and all that, and so the Baker family came in 1928, so my dad got to see it. My dad born in 17, so he's 11 years old. He got to see Lake Chelan before the lake was raised. And then they went back to Iowa and sold everything and moved out in 2029, and the lake was coming up.
So they were from Iowa, your family?
Yes.
Right on. And
he was born in Illinois, and they came from Iowa.
Yeah, it's always interesting, when you think about like one or two people ago, like my grandmother came on a covered wagon and, in the early 1900s as a little girl, and how much has changed in just 3 generations. It
was Mom Baker, her cousin was Amanda Harding's shed. And so they came out to visit the Hardings.
Okay.
Oh.
And so that was, everybody grew corn and hogs back in Iowa, and hey, there's another kind of farming.
Wow, yeah.
Come out to Washington and grow apples. And so they went back and sold everything, and in the spring, in May of 1929, they moved to Manson.
That's cool. Did your dad tell stories about what it was like when he first moved here and how much it's changed?
Yes, in some of that we there were some struggles. I mean, there were obviously, because those were hard times. But the family dynamics, what was going on in the community. He was a fun guy. I mean, he was, out with the crowd, and he was kind of, popular. He got out and did things, and he lined up work to get in there, and then he had to take a couple of years off after his junior year in high school to work. Came back and graduated and was valedictorian of his class. So is to take time off, and he still came back and was valedictorian. So really pretty remarkable what he did there. But he graduated 37 and went straight up to Holden Mine.
Really?
And so you got another piece of this great Lake Chelan history. So 37 to 39, so 3 years up in Holden.
Wow.
And those are some stories.
I bet.
And so in the 70s, we went up together, and he's walking through Holden, and he was kind of like, nothing looks familiar. And because it had, even the village up there had changed enough that the mine's over there, but none of this looks familiar. And it was just kind of amazing that I wouldn't have expected that. But he was on the transportation crew. He was transportation, so he started out on the dozer at pulling logs out. So he was pulling logs out of the woods to build the town. And then he got to be on the trucks that were hauling ore down to Lucerne. So as he was.
Can you imagine just that alone? If you said, "I'm going to pull logs off to build a," what the government would be like, right? Back then it was like, yeah, it makes sense. Let's do it. Now it'd be like, oh, we got to have 100 permits.
There was no permit back
no
then.
permit.
They made things. That was that industrious side. Is the whole. Yeah. The Lake Chelan Dam is the whole thing. Is they got in and said, hey, we need to do this. Let's engineer it, and how they did that pin stock. Just an amazing engineering feat that what.
And they just got out of World War I, and they're right before World War II. I mean, there were some bigger issues.
Right.
Than let's get a permit to do everything. But things change, right? So you're still on the family homestead. That's on.
I'm third generation on the homestead.
How's that feel?
I'm tired of it.
Time for a change.
It's time for change.
Yeah.
With farming went south, it just isn't fun anymore. And so you've got a big chunk of land, and so that there's the water, the taxes, the upkeep, and it's kind of like, why are we working this hard? And so.
Yeah, and you grew up working in the orchard, I imagine.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because you said, as we know, the apple farming, fruit farming business is really depressed. People are really facing, again, another round of very difficult economic times. This one seems to be more aggressive than all of them. It's almost like death through 1,000 cuts, and the way I look at it. And I often want to talk to farmers that are at that point where it's, you described as not fun anymore, but when people look at the orchards being ripped out and an alternative use coming in, my position is like, look, you've earned it to be able to do whatever's legal with your property. And it's not like all these apple farmers one day just said, yeah, I'm just going to be a capitalist and I'm just going to make millions, because that's not how it works. And in most cases, it's a challenge to do anything else. And it's not based on the fact that they want to. It's more economic need, because the apple farming just doesn't.
So, Russ, where would we be today if we didn't have the beautiful valley of the lake, if we didn't have the scenery? We would be a ghost town.
Ghost town, yeah.
Yeah, it's just where we'd be headed right now. So having another opportunity, I embrace it. Change is change. But is to have something positive. A guy asked me years ago, as an attorney, and he says, what do you think of the people that have moved in? And I said, most of them, the most wonderful people in the world. And so the doors are open for wonderful people, but you're going to get people who don't. So what does it take to break down the barrier and be part of the community is that we'll get involved in the community. That's that one piece of take some ownership of it, and it doesn't matter whether you're on a service club or fire department or just helping in the parks or whatever. It can be anything, but giving back and instead of expecting the community to be made perfect for you, you be a part of making it perfect.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I kind of use that definition as when people always ask, "What's a local mean?" I say, if you're a good person, you're involved in the community, and you live here, you're a local. I mean, you're generational, I'm generational, but there's no like litmus test that says you have to be here a certain amount of time to be considered a community member and a part of this town. So it's one of the hopeful things is that we've got a lot of comments from people that really have told us by watching this podcast, they feel like they appreciate that's a position we take, because sometimes people do feel ostracized or divided or misunderstood when all they really want to do is give back. They just want to have, be a good person. So it's neat to hear that.
You got to find your niche for that.
Yeah, right.
Here I was farming, and until somebody invited me to be in the fire department, and then I discovered there's my niche.
Do you remember who did that 40 years ago?
Yes, I did. Terry Ernest.
Terry Ernest.
Terry Ernest invited me.
There's an old school farmer.
we need some help in the fire department.
Yeah.
You'd be great. Oh. I was unaware. So that personal invitation is very good. And I keep telling my firefighters, we can do all of the publicizing, news, blitz, everything, put all that information out there, but it's the invitation, one-on-one.
That's good.
That's going to be the most effective to get volunteer firefighters.
Yeah, and then the acceptance of that and being open and minded enough to go check it out.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. You can be invited, but you also have to be a little vulnerable and say, all right, I have no idea what that means, but I'm going to go look into it.
Well, I had family members. My dad didn't do the fire department. He did dozer work up on fires, but that wasn't his cup of tea. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll talk about that in a bit. But I had family members in the fire service, and so there was an interest to see where that would go. And all of a sudden, I discovered where I wanted, and it wasn't my dad's, because I was working with my dad. Fire department wasn't his thing; it was my thing. Mm-hmm. And so that gave me my identity away from the farm that I needed. I needed to have something that it was mine.
Well, it's been yours a long time.
Yeah.
So your family in this area, and you're pretty knowledgeable on this from your notes. Thanks for sending those to me. In 1955 and in 1968, we had devastating freezes. Do you remember what your dad used to talk about that, or what you remember about those?
Well,
history?
We had the Starking delicious trees, and those so those would freeze, and so those 2 particular years, the sap was up in the base, and so when the cambium layer of the tree, when that sap freezes, it shreds it, and then it no longer connects, so that the tree dies because it doesn't have that place to the sap up and down the tree to feed the tree anymore, so the tree dies. And sometimes it was a side root. So you're seeing grafts that they would do from the root up to the upper part of the tree, and that piece that was frozen that died in the middle, and they would put grafts in, and seeing all those things and how they did workarounds to keep those trees alive and to keep them going for a few more years.
And that's what a time when the distance between trees was maybe 50 by 50 or larger, where
30
these trees,
by 30, yeah, there was huge trees.
Huge trees, pick 2-3 bins of apples per tree.
Wow.
Yeah. Now they're planting, maybe not so much now, but in the last decade, we're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 trees an acre versus 100 to 200 trees an acre.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, now just the economics of replanting to get to that 70, 80 bin yield is 60, 70 grand an acre.
Yeah,
if you're trying to keep up,
it's crazy to try to keep up with it, and so
chasing varietals. I have an old reel-to-reel projection film of the deer drive, which I think was in '68, Might have been 69. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I got to pull that
You've
out.
asked a few people this, and nobody remembers it.
Yeah, and I have it on film, so I know what happened. And they linked the town, got the deer out of the orchards because there was so much snow, they all came down in and were eating all the orchards. Mm-hmm. I mean, thousands of deer. So the town kind of linked, a whole bunch of people kind of pushed them back up into the mountains. I got to find out. Anyway, I've always asked people because I remember seeing it as a kid, and I'm like, does anybody else remember this?
But we never had deer in our orchard as a kid. We never saw them down here.
Right.
And so here they are.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of like, okay, I didn't expect to see this, to have all the wildlife, and the occasional moose that comes through. And that's town news is when a moose comes through, or
Yeah.
when somebody spots a wolf or something like that.
Well, it's interesting. Your dad, the Baker packing shed, it says your father built a wooden packing shed in 1955, which was the year of the freeze. So that timing must have been like, oh man.
Yeah.
Holy
That
cow.
had to be a pretty rough, to go to this expense and then to all of a sudden not have
cash
that.
reserves.
But he did custom packing, and as we're here at the barbershop, there was the Chelan Fruit or Winoka was packing across the street here. And so he was doing some custom work for them, so that kind of kept him going.
And you have the label, you have the Baker Boy label.
Yeah.
Do you have any of those labels left?
But we do not have it in the wooden apple box. It was after that period.
Oh, okay.
Even though the shed was there and they packed in wooden boxes, but they packed under somebody else's label. Some custom work for that. So they didn't have theirs at the time. So when they went to cardboard, then we had the Baker Boy label.
I love those wooden boxes. I think every kid learned how to build fires with those wooden boxes in our generation, where you cut them up and use them as kindling.
I might have a few.
You might have been fire bug. That's why you're a fireman.
No, I didn't do that. I mean, I still have the
You
boxes.
still have boxes.
Yeah.
That's cool. So while we're still on the ag, one more question about that. For people that have moved here, and I talk to a lot of them, what do you think a few things that people do not understand about how hard it is to be an apple farmer, if they've just never had any history with it?
You get one crop a year, you get one paycheck a year, realistically, as you get to harvest that one time. And of course now with the multiple varieties, it isn't like just picking the reds and then pick the goldens first, then the reds. It wasn't just the limited number of varieties, that we had. The challenge is that if something goes bad,
That's it.
Maybe next year. And it was kind of like that's a tough thing to say, is like, we just lost a big chunk of our income for this year, so it's tighten the belt and maybe next year.
Yeah, live on the low, invest in
And
the
so
high.
that was, those were tough times. And so you're still farming, and they would have to go work out, and so to get through those freezes, after the 68, my dad was a welder. He was a welder in World War II, but he was a welder up on like Wells Dam and Grand Coulee Dam. So he got to, go do something to supplement, because farming wasn't doing it.
Yeah, you have the people that small farms. My dad raised 3 kids on 10 acres, and he had to work it all the time. In fact, I had a friend come back after 35 years. He hadn't been to towns, and he was one of my best friends. We grew up next door to each other, and just last week. And he talked about my dad, and he was like, I never remember your dad having crews, but I always remember the work getting done. And I was like, those guys worked all day, all night, all day, all night sometimes.
Well, is the pruning. You did it all winter long, and you did it all yourself. And so that was the piece. The only thing that you really had to hire out was harvest. Yeah. You'd hire out, depending on the size of your farm, you had some thinning. But, some of those things are changing nowadays as to what do you remember propping? Do you remember putting a...
Rake and brush, propping, thinning, pruning,
There's
mowing.
things that have gone by that we don't do anymore. Yeah. And people wonder, well, why would you prop? I don't understand. And, it's tree design. We had those big monster trees, and we had to put props under it to hold the limbs from falling down. So.
Yeah, and like 16-foot ladders.
Yeah.
Not a lot different now. Lot different game, and it's sad because all those beautiful times in history are dissolving fast, and it's sad to see. But we are lucky that we have other higher and better uses. I don't know better uses, but other uses that could actually help people survive. Maybe bankruptcy, foreclosures, things that are sadly also part of the game. And in large part, we went back into that leverage world where these new varietals were a blessing and a curse, because then you had to replant, you had to keep up chasing varieties, and it'd take 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 years to get back in production. And then by then, the variety that you thought was going to be a good variety.
For instance, Gala, and it went through so many phases as to what was the Gala that you had to have. Yeah. And so it was kind of like you were always about one variety behind.
Yeah, that's cool. So you graduated from Manson High School. You were a Trojan in 1977. What was Manson like in those years, Manson High School? What was it like growing up here?
Well, and I got to say that, we weren't the best of, it was a peacetime in the world, so I'd thought about going into the military, but there really wasn't
a need
in there, so that was kind of like, well, do I do that or not? And so I was not the kind of kid that did well in school. I didn't feel like I was the popular one. I wasn't good at sports. I was just average, and so it was like high school experience. We enjoyed FFA. We enjoyed some things that were that kind of fit the need. It was a peaceful time, but I think I didn't have a good attitude. I don't think that. I think that was on me, and it took the first couple of years getting out of school to kind of help fix that.
So in your notes, you said you went to Treetop, and then was it Earhart's Irrigation?
Yeah. So that
right
So I got the call one day, and Treetop, and says you're on at midnight tonight. Oh great, so you can't sleep. So you go in there, and the reality check is that you get on the line and you're trimming apples. So I was at the dehydrating plant, and you're trimming apples, and you work real hard, and I wanted to just get this thing, and figured, well, lots of time has gone by. Looked up at the clock, and 5 minutes had gone by. This was this piece of reality that says, no, this is not the career for me. That now I want to try a little harder, and I want to find something.
So that you said you did that a few years. Then by like 1980, you were back in town.
Yeah, and so doing those seasonal things. So we did Earhart Irrigation in the summer, and then and then I would do Treetop or something else in the winter. And it was just kind of like that, the seasonal things, just to keep money coming in the door. And those weren't big money. That was $3 or $4 an hour, and it's kind of like but that was the wage of the day.
Sure.
And it's kind of like I don't have to worry about there's always work on the farm, and my dad had invited me back, so we came back up.
How many acres did you guys farm at that time?
We had 40.
That was pretty good size.
That was pretty good size, but we didn't have much of it in good production. There was still too much of it. My dad loved to experiment.
Did he?
And instead of planting and doing what everybody else was getting good production, as he wanted to, I want to graft to this or that or the other, and it was kind of like. He was experimenting, and those things weren't panning out to make any money.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like it was a lot of effort for no money, and so that was kind of on the rough side to say, we're working too hard and not making money. And
sounds like he was quite the entrepreneur, though.
He
visionary.
Was. Yeah. I mean, he loved to do those things. So I think the reality hit us the last year that we packed our own fruit was 1985 in the packing shed. And is kind of realizing that in '85, there was such a premium on the large red apples,
Yeah,
and we
48s.
were taking a cut on them because the packing shed couldn't supply. We packed them all, and there's X number of boxes, and so to a buyer, well, I get those, but what are you going to give me next week? I want to buy that next week, and then the week after, and the week,
Consistency.
and we couldn't do that. We had that many boxes,
Yeah.
and so they weren't willing to pay the premium for where they could go to the co-op and get what they wanted,
Sorted and shipped.
and get it every week.
Yeah, so they're graded, right? They're sorted, graded. You buy a box of the exact same size apples, exact same quality apples. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of that, wait a minute, we're working hard and making less money.
Yeah.
And so then we went to a shed, went to BB in 1986, and hey, it's easier.
Yeah, they're doing the work. We
Yeah.
just got to
They're
get
doing
it
the
there.
work and we can make more money.
Yeah.
And talking about your dad, did you say that he was in the military?
He was in civil service.
Okay.
So he worked at the San Pedro shipyard during World War II. And after Pearl Harbor, so family is my mom and my sister were there. But when the bombing of Pearl Harbor, they all volunteered to go to Hawaii, but he wasn't selected for that. So stayed there, and,
Wow.
and with oxyacetylene torch that I have.
Same one.
And you got a 30-inch drive line on a ship, and you're taking this oxyacetylene torch, and you cut that drive line in two. It's kind of like what he was such a perfectionist on his equipment. In order to be able to do that, as we played around in the metal shop at school, we couldn't do that kind of stuff. And it's to kind of know what you could actually do with that equipment and what they did. Very industrious.
Wow.
Yeah, it was an amazing time for those guys.
Yeah.
You have an Alaskan adventure I'm curious about. So in 1980, you come back, and then in 1981, you went to Alaska for a mining adventure. What inspired that? Is that because your dad was
Yeah, because he went and did a mining adventure, so we had to have a mining adventure. And my brother went on that same one up in Alaska. So we were in the Denali Park, and now it's back to what's the name of it now? But the Denali is this 20,000 foot high mountain. We were in the back of that park. And so there was a mining claim back in there. So we got to be where the public couldn't go. Beautiful country and placer mine. And so,
I love Alaska. I'm in a love affair with Alaska, but it's, you were probably up there when it was 24 hours of daylight.
Yes, absolutely. And that was the coolest thing, is to have the sun out. And so the sun, it went around the room. It would dip behind the mountain, but you still had all the light. And then it, come up. And so it was circling this. It wasn't going this way. It was circling around you that way. And so it's kind of like, there was an interesting thing. But when for 2 months, you had 24-hour light. And then, so what we did is we worked a week a day shift, then you work a week a night shift, and so we alternated. And so then when I went back and had to work night shift, then all of a sudden it got dark on me. When you haven't seen dark in a couple of months, I was a little bit, whoa, what happened?
Well, that's hard for a lot of Alaskans when they don't see the light for so long. It's very depressing.
I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Missing that vitamin D.
It's already hard enough when it's just cloudy for a week. I couldn't imagine.
Did that experience change your perspective on work or life at that age?
I got stronger than a horse. During my job is we were trading off between front end loader, and it was placer mine, so that they would put a front end loader a load of dirt up on the we called it a grizzly. It was a big grid, but you had to throw the rocks off there. So my job was throwing rocks, and I could throw rocks that I couldn't even roll today. I mean, it was just kind of like, but it gave me this opportunity to be really strong. But you know, it was out in the beautiful outdoors, so we enjoyed it.
Yeah, you were like 22, 23 years old. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun time. Well, this transitions again with your dad and watching him do his thing, the bee business. It says your father started a bee business originally just to secure pollination for the orchard. So how did that turn in? Because it turned into an operation, like a large operation.
And so it was like, you know, hey, y'all, this farmer, that farmer, you know, is I'll put in your bees for you. You know, so he would, you know, get them from the beekeeper. He tried to keep hives of his own, but that never worked out. And this isn't, our climate is not great up in the hills around here, so it's tough on bees. You know, people who are doing that is more of a hobby in town. They're doing okay, but you know, now we have people that have ornamentals that are blooming more, so that you've got more to feed those bees. But back in the day, you know, when you had the apple trees in bloom, great. And then right behind the apple trees, you would have the greasewood. When you see the greasewood, it is bright yellow. There's just the pollen nectar coming off of that would help feed bees. But then when it dries up, bees, they don't lay eggs anymore unless there's food coming in the door.
Yeah, so you guys, you'd go get the beehives and you supplied them to, I think at one point you said you had 9,300 hives a season. That's a lot of bees.
That was a lot of bees.
And like 125,000 hives during the years you did that work.
I did about 30 years.
Wow.
So from the 82, and I did about 30 years, and then it was kind of like, I gotta
You probably
stop.
put them on my dad's place out by the...
Probably did. Yes. Yeah. And I knew everybody's place at night, you know, so I knew just don't park something new in the way so that it, you know, it got used to, you know, and I kind of yellowed out my lights so that they didn't, you know, you don't want bright white lights on bees. And so you learn to kind of how you treat them and those things. But so we started out moving those single hives. Well, that's why my dad wanted my help. Was, you know, it's great when you go put them out initially because the hive would weigh 50, 60 pounds and, you know, one person could handle that.
It's a lot heavier at the end.
And then you go back to pick it up.
Yep.
After it picked up some of that,
full of honey.
That little honey in there, and all of a sudden it's 100 or 120 pounds. Now I understood why he wanted the young kid to help him out, to, you know, to lift these things. So we did that. What's crazy is the bees did better when we mechanized and put them on the forks on a tractor.
Really?
It was a progression that you could go pick it up by hand and do your thing to not disturb, and you know. But when you slid that hive, they come pouring out, and so you had bees on you all night long. Well, when you started doing tractors, and you know, we were used to putting all the veil, and you know, when we figured out we don't need all that stuff on, and the beekeeper says, "One thing you're doing is you're keeping the bee inside because they're going to get inside your suit." So now you can't get to them. And so he said, take that veil off. And he was right. Yeah.
Wow.
He was right. And so you kind of, you know, so we were working, it was all night work.
Yeah. So when did you guys end doing that?
Well, it would have been about 10 or 12, somewhere in there. Yeah, 11, I think, 2011, I think is when we wrapped that up.
Tell us about the time you got on the wrong end of the bee business. What does that mean?
Oh, the wrong end of it. Well, we had one year where we had actually staged bees up in the, I'm sorry to lose the names, but golf course that went in Bear Mountain. Pardon me. And so we were going up there to where they had just starting to do that, and so my dad got permission, and we went up there, and so we staged the bees up there. Well, climbing up the hill, and the Kenworth and how we had them tied, and the rope was too close to the exhaust.
Burned the rope.
Burned the rope in two. They were stacked 4 pallets high. So full stack and a 3 high went off.
Smash.
And it fell off without us knowing about it, which means had the trailer and the tractor behind and ran over those.
Oh.
That was a bad night.
Wow.
That was a bad night to try to put this together.
How to clean it
It's
up.
hot, and when it's warm at night, everybody wants their bees pulled out, and you just had a major mishap, and your night's over. You're trying to pick up this. The bees are mad, and they get I had stings because they get in. They're going to crawl inside. You zip in, they're going to crawl in. And so I had the veil on, and so when the thing I remember is when I got home, my wife, on the top of my T-shirt, I had a string of stingers. Mm-hmm. And she looks and she says, "That's gotta hurt." What?
You didn't notice?
My ankles hurt so bad that I forgot all about these.
Oh yeah.
And it's got like that was so much pain around my ankles at being stung so much. That a dozen stingers on my neck, and I was unaware.
Wow.
Yikes.
Do you remember when they went from winter bananas as the cross pollinators to snowdrifts and Manchurian crab apples?
Yeah.
You know what I remember about that? Because I was the kid that was going, let's do this, let's do the new planting, let's do this, and my dad was like, all right. And then the next thing you know, we pruned those, and the next thing you know, all our tires are going flat. Because those had spikes.
Spikes out of those about as hard as nails. And,
my dad was
exactly.
like, news always not better. News not better. Cause I was like, I didn't think about the tire bill.
We didn't, yeah. It's pollinating. So when we did our replant in '84, and we still at that time thought, reds and goldens. So we picked one of the high strains of red and
colored better.
And goldens had always done great on that property, and I wished we'd have just done goldens. Would have been a whole lot less hassle.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so those Manchurian crabs, and we put those in there.
Yeah, the tire company did well. A lot of flat tires. Yeah. I have this idea, I have some orchard now that I don't know what to do with, that I just bought. The orchard came with the house, but I had this idea about just going back to just a few acres, pull quite a bit of the old stuff out, but have just like the earliest variety I could find, like a Rome or like a Starking Red Delicious or a Classic Golden, and just go heritage, go back.
I wish somebody had the Common Delicious.
Common Delicious, yeah.
The Common Delicious was the most flavorful apple of the delicious variety, because when we started putting red on there, we lost it.
Yeah, that night a color sorter screwed us.
And if we'd have kept the Common, would fit right in the market today.
Yeah.
It would be here. But
because the public doesn't know. I mean, the marketing departments, I think, were the ones that were pushing the red.
Right.
And people are like, why does this apple not taste like it used to taste? Because those original ones that taste so good and stored so well were never designed to be that red.
Russ, how long ago was it where the red delicious apple was the first thing you saw in the produce department? It was the calling card to the produce.
Yeah, it's just.
How long has it been since you've seen a red delicious on a shelf?
A long time.
Yeah,
long time. I don't even know if you can find some of the
We
old
never
ones.
saw that coming. We never saw that would ever go to a place where would be taken off the market, and so that was.
We did a lot of things to ourselves, unfortunately. All right, well, let's get into this. Entering the fire service in 1986, you joined the fire department as a volunteer, thanks to Terry Ernest, and we talked a little bit about that. What was the department like in 1986?
Well, simple. That's great. Jim Koenig was chief, and Jim was, his drill night is, we'd have a task, we'd have a little meeting and go do a task and go out and work on a skill, and so that was. It was just what we did.
Was it all volunteers?
It was all volunteer.
Wow. And now what is it? And volunteer versus employees?
There's two career.
There's two.
Two.
Two. We've come a long ways. In 40 years, we got two people.
Well, and just as a little brief in there, a couple of years, about 3.5 years. So I started in July, 3.5 years, and then I got to be assistant chief. Assistant chief for 8 years. So, and then was appointed chief. I was the chief position was still considered volunteer. That was, and so it had a certain amount. Well, depending on how farming was doing at the time, and it was kind of like I was putting in some extra time, and the board was like, okay, well, let's base your salary on this many hours, and then this many, and so there was a process of 7 years as it ramped up. And then it was kind of like, when you start working, if this position is 130 hours, it kind of looks like a full-time job.
Yeah.
And Morgan Picton was the chair of the board, and he says, is there enough to keep you busy?
At 130 hours a week.
There's enough to keep 10 people busy,
Yeah.
but it's, you just kind of have to choose the high points as to what you do. And we transitioned, and then I started into the retirement system, so.
Wow.
I, as a real estate broker, when I owned the brokerage, we have agents that work with us, but they're all self-employed.
Right.
They're not employees. So that is a little different cultural dynamic that what we can demand or ask or culturally. I would imagine running a volunteer department is somewhat similar in the fact that if they're employees, you go here, 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 here. Did you ever find it challenging when you're trying to run a fire department for a community and it's the volunteers? Did you ever find that challenging, or was that the people that did it were just really committed and followed?
Well, the people were very committed. And a new volunteer would come in the door. Your family's first, your job's second, and this is community service. And please don't take those out of priority, because we need your family to support you to be here. We need your employer to support you. So these are priorities, and keep those respected. Because we had people who come in and this was the greatest thing, and they just wanted to put in all the time. They were gone,
Yeah.
When things crumbled, they were gone in a couple of months. The best volunteers are busy people.
Driven.
They're self-employed, they're busy people, they're your best volunteers. They will do the most for you because they're self-starters. And and it's just kind of how, but I've one of my tasks the last few years, the Washington Fire Chiefs started a new committee, recruit retention of volunteers. I chaired that for the last 3 years. I got to learn a ton about defining what culture for a volunteer department. We were doing great. We had several great examples across the state. And so it was kind of nice to be able to kind of start looking at these high points of what was working, but you also see where some had failed. And you just kind of like look at why things fail. So it was really important. And so what I had done from the beginning of prioritizing family and your job first, those were absolute things that carried on through as I kind of looked into other departments. We did it right.
Yeah, you did. It's been amazing. And this is an interesting question. In the small towns, the people you respond to are often your neighbors and friends.
Yeah.
How does that change the experience of being a firefighter when you're so closely connected?
You're going to do CPR on your friends. I did CPR on my mom.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's what you've got to, when you get into the emergency services, you're going to have a really rough day with the people closest to you. But you could also, I'll put it this way: when I got into the fire service in EMS, going out and occasionally have to do CPR. For 25 years, I never had a single save.
Oh, wow.
My wife was an EMT, and she had a save, but it was a fluke. You know, it was. The chances were very low in how we were doing our technique. They did some studies at University of Washington, Harborview, and King County Medic One of, we call it high performance CPR. We changed our technique a little bit. We were getting 50% survival. We went from 0 to 50%, and we can do it in a rural community. So it was really cool. I mean, I had one call that I was chastised for, but it was kind of like, okay, we had 15 firefighters show up for a CPR. And the neighbors were like, all these cars. Well, if there's a CPR, my firefighters will come from wherever they are. You don't need to go get it. We've got an ambulance coming. We've got the equipment coming. Get your body there to, help with that crew. And so you'll see this converging of personal vehicles as they're responding. Works very well, and it lets us get that early response. And now all of a sudden is the most meaningful thing in the whole world is seeing somebody get their life back.
Not bad.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Now.
I could not do that job. Thank you.
Well,
yeah, thank you.
But it for me, it's so meaningful to see somebody survive.
Oh, man.
But so nowadays you're going to see some not make it, and you're going to see those that, your friends, they're not going to make it, but you're going to see some of them live.
Yeah.
And that's the greatest thing in the world they were dead. They didn't have a pulse.
Yeah.
And they joined their family. So we've got in CPR, in the EMS part of it, we just have this wonderful system in this valley. And we're some of the leading in the world, in the nation, it's that great.
That's amazing. That's a true testament for the people in the community.
So you've been in these environments of, emergency calls, fires, illness, heart attacks, you name strokes, for 40 years.
Yeah.
Now, I think understanding the trauma, the mental trauma, the post-traumatic stress is probably never been more talked about than these days. But for a long time, I can imagine that wasn't even in the conversation.
It was stuffed. We stuffed it. If we had a really bad call, we'd go down to the fire department and we'd sit around and talk about it, and that would be it. You talked about it once. Thank goodness for Chris Cruz.
Yeah, that goes back to as a chaplain. There's another element.
But see, is the chaplain is for the public. What we also put Chris through is a program called peer support. That's for us. And so that he's a one-on-one with us. And so that's when I say a therapy appointment, I'm not kidding, because I get to come in and I get to talk about that. And so we're in a private one-on-one conversation as I'm getting a haircut, and I get to talk about it. And so it's
that's really cool. That's very special.
But we've made that investment, and we've got Tony Harlake also here in town, so we've added Tony into that. So there's two of them to just help us. The mental health it's huge, and it would, what you would see in the old days, you saw burnout. We don't have to have burnout. We don't have to let people go through burnout. We can, let's deal with the rough side of what we do as responders to make people whole again, so they enjoy their families, so they don't have the burnout, they don't have the negativity, and then we lose them.
Yeah, we saw, we were talking to it was Dwight, the park ranger, and he brought up something pretty interesting, because he just retired as a park ranger after 40 years or something. And he said that the people that trained him, and you were often World War II vets. And those guys, obviously, they called it shell shock, but they didn't have any. Their counselor was Jack Daniels,
Right.
Or Jim Beam or something.
Yeah.
They were just go to the bar
and once again, just shove it
down.
Stuff it away.
But he said that it took him a while to understand from his mentors that were a very different way of doing the world with World War I and World War II. And I'm sure that you had to evolve as well when you start the younger guys coming in. And I know in real estate, I have to constantly think about how to communicate with people of multiple generations, because we'll have 4 or 5 generations in an office.
Right.
And they just don't always communicate the same. The way they were raised is different. The programming is different. The sensitivity, what we sometimes call soft, is not fair, because we were, like we talked about earlier, we were raised as latchkey kids. I mean, we had no rules.
We had a young man in his young 20s on the department, and he was first on the scene to a tragic accident. And so they were trying, and the individual, the driver, was pinned underneath it, and so it was a rough, you're using all your, and he can't lift the machine off, and so they're doing everything they can to get him out. By the time we get there, we get him out. So do you start CPR? And they did, but then they ceased because it had already been too long. But it was kind of like I got right in his face, and I said, "Okay, I know you're hurting, but every one of us are hurting. Do not hurt alone. You get in here, you talk about it. It's you hurt with us, not all by yourself."
Well, that's great leadership.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of like, we had that conversation about 6 inches. Our noses about 6 inches apart. This is what I expect you to do.
Yeah.
You don't walk alone here.
You need to hear me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I've experienced this stuff. Don't do it alone.
Yeah.
After 40 years, you've seen a lot of people, most people, take for granted that there's going to be a person like you, or police or ambulance. Do you remember one that is your favorite experience in 40 years? Like something that was really turned out well, or maybe funny?
I'll give you one that, for most of the folks in town, they still remember as the falling cow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was the first responder. I had driven through there 3 minutes before. It was tragic for the cow. So, but it was miraculous that the couple in the car were uninjured.
So let's
a
just
bit
stop.
Traumatized.
Yeah. If anybody doesn't know the cow story, let's tee
because
it up.
now there's a falling cow event or some celebration.
Yeah. So Lake Chelan Winery does the Falling Cow Festival. Yeah.
So it actually happened. For people that have never heard the true story, this is the true story. So
in 2007, I believe it was, fall 2007, and it was happening to be a Sunday. We were doing a combined drill with Chelan with some new recruits, and said, "Okay, I'm going to go to church in the morning, and then I'll come in and help with that drill in the afternoon." And I had just driven through there. And I get just before no CM when the call comes out, turn around to come back. And so, going code, I'm about 3 minutes in there behind this, well, there was two twin brothers that were in the same vehicle, and those guys, look at that cow. So they actually had a visual when the cow tumbled off and before it hit the car.
So it fell off halfway between Chelan and Manson.
Right up on Rocky Point.
Rocky Point, and it
And
slipped
so it was
off.
kind of on the Chelan side of Rocky Point. So it fell 40 feet or so.
Imagine.
Now it hit a minivan. So there's this couple, and they were doing timeshare at Wapato Point, and so they had traded and got to, hey, let's go. This looks to be a great place. And so they had gone to church in Chelan, coming home to be very, very surprised with about 600 pounds. It was a heifer, not a cow. So the heifer belonged to a family in Spokane, and they sent it over here to be bred. Well, it didn't want to be bred. It cleared the 7-foot fence to get out of the pen.
Wow.
The day before, they put it back in, cleared it again. So they're out there looking four-wheelers to find this thing where they had found it the day before. And so they're around looking. Well, they got the phone call and said, we got your cow.
That cow decided to suicide by cow. It was over.
Yeah,
It was over.
it shows suicide.
I'd rather die than breed. I'm out
Yeah.
of
I'm not.
here. Not with you, bud. I'm out of here.
And
So
so what
lucky.
it is was
Gosh.
a minivan. Now the hood on a minivan is about that long.
Right.
They're not very long. Mm-hmm. That 600-pound animal hit the hood, not the windshield.
Wow.
Could you imagine being in that car?
Oh, they'd have been dead instantly.
It
I would've-
embedded, and until they had paved and repaved that, where the front bolts on the front end, they gouged in. And it's kind of like, I had the spot, right there it is, showing the gouge, but so I can go right very, very close to it today. But it was,
bet you-
so that goes in. It tears the oil pan out of the motor. The cow stays on the hood for about 50 feet before it slides off. Well, the guy was so freaked out, he floored it. That didn't kill the motor. And, but there's oil. It has ripped the oil pan to shreds. So oil was flying everywhere. There's a lot of oil. And so he's driving without oil. And what was strange is it flexed that thing. If you impact a windshield, you'll get a star. There was no star. It had flexed it, and there were vertical cracks. So it had flexed that thing so that it had snapped that.
I mean, if that happened, the odds of that not hurting someone would be so.
I didn't.
Well, the gentleman had thought, well, there was one cow, there's a herd, and that was why he floored it, to get away from there. Because
Like a buffalo herd.
He thought there was going to be more coming.
One's bad enough. I don't want any more.
Can you imagine?
Because I did not hear that he kept driving. That was the first time I heard that.
And so he kept coming out as to about where Wally Peterson's cherry orchard was, is where his car finally died.
Wow.
So I was coming from the Chelan side and came back, and I found the cow with no car, but obviously an oil slick. And the Manson EMS was Sue, as you had Sue Baker on there. She was on ambulance, and so she found the car, but no cow.
Jeez.
And
Nobody got hurt.
So we all,
Except the cow.
this thing. But here's the kind of the interesting. So I took a group of adults, and we were going down to Cabo. 4 days later, we were at the church. 11 o'clock p.m. We were doing a bus to catch a morning flight, and I get National Public Radio to call me up.
Oh, really?
Sitting there at 11 o'clock, and it was kind of like, okay, and I'm doing an interview. Get me out of here. I've got to get away from this thing. We get down to Cabo, and I tell the missionary wife about this thing, and yeah, right. Then she heard that night. She heard that interview, and so there. But we had Lanny and Linda Blesson were vacationing in the outback in Australia, and they go pick up the local paper and read the story
In Australia.
in Australia.
Oh my
You're
gosh.
famous.
So it is that little moment of fame. It's kind of like, for one incident,
You're 50
we've had
minutes of fame.
We've had the whole mountainside burning, in a wildfire, but no, that cow was probably the biggest.
You should have to speak at the celebration every year as the first guy. All right, so the fallen cow. Is there one that's is there one that you remember that you wish you didn't after 40 years? Besides maybe your mom, that sounded pretty rough. That was pretty rough.
Well, the boys that drowned in roses.
That's the kind of stuff that is so unpredictable, I would imagine, when you think about being a fireman and you think about some of the tragedies that you might find. That was such a...
Okay, let's go. It goes deeper. The dad was one of my firemen of one boy, and the mom was my secretary for the other boy.
Oh.
So they were both in our family.
And they fell through the ice. Yeah, ultimately.
And the dad,
Yeah.
don't you ever go on that ice. Do not go on that, so he had that conversation. It's just that there was this curiosity of kid, and so is to that east end of Roses where there's water coming in. There's a drain that comes in so that it gets some warm water and it thinned the ice. So they got on the ice on the thick and they walked in towards and.
I remember that day because I was with, Keith, and we were all looking because in the beginning we didn't know.
Right.
What had happened, where they were. They might have been missing it. We were looking through all the cabins at the time, in case they were,
We
abducted.
had, got out there that evening and called the Chelan guys, had them come out with their ladder truck just to put, if we could get eyes, let's rule out the lake. Mm-hmm. Well, they couldn't see anything. Even with their spotlights, they couldn't see anything on the lake. And so that was we were trying to rule things out. And then I had, sheriff's office came in and it's kind of like, okay, here's what we've done. We've done this, and, we needed emergency management to kind of, what do we do now? Mm-hmm. And, I remember the simple words is, check everything again. Trade people, get people going a different direction, and so that we would double check things. Were you there the next morning? So that was in the evening. I had the dad, catch me at a ball game and said, "Hey, we can't find my son."
Mm-hmm.
They were about 8.
And it was
How old were they? Like, how old were the boys?
They were 10 and 11.
10 and 11.
And they said, we can't find him. So we just kind of went out, and when we went and we kind of got this whole thing going. So we would have been 6 or 7 in the evening. And, we were, got things looked through the evening. And, so then the deputy was like, okay, everybody needs to be here at 6 o'clock in the morning. So then we figured out we took pretty much the town of Manson, we kind of figured out as to kind of what area, and we probably took a 10 square mile area and we gridded that off and made teams. So I put a fireman with a radio, and then I took community members, non-English speaking Hispanics showed up because it was kids. Mm-hmm. They were non-English speaking. So we would get them on a team, but we ended up taking our 10 teams, or we had enough people to put on, 10 radios so that we had folks going out so that we could communicate with the team numbers. And then we put more agency people, because we had other agencies involved, Forest Service. We had all kinds of agencies, and then we just took everybody who had just shown up and we divided them up and put those people on each team, so that you kind of had a team leader and some folks, and then we searched this town.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And until it got up till about good daylight, before they could see the broken ice, and then they went out and looked.
Yeah, well, that was a sad day.
Yeah.
I remember I went through all the pickers' cabins. In case they were, just playing or abducted.
Look everywhere. Look everywhere.
You had to look everywhere. It was a bad day. Well, yeah, you've seen a lot of, again, thank you for all of the 4 decades of that. Good stuff and bad stuff that, we need as a town, and we often take for granted. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so you became a captain, you said earlier, in 89, and then you became the chief in 98. You've talked about wanting to change the culture and strengthen the volunteer program a little bit already. What was the key to having such a good volunteer program? Was it just the culture of the people, and then all of your leadership about the priorities?
It really takes those priorities.
So
that's the foundation that we built on. What it was that we were serving our community. In part of the focus of what we have done in Manson, mm-hmm. the total focus is the delivery of services, fire and EMS, and we work closely with the hospital's EMS program. In fact, we have them in our station, so that we can have advanced life support, EMS, housed in our community. And so Manson is so fortunate, so fortunate, the program that we're able to collaborate to do there. But for the volunteers, your purpose is giving to the community. Well, they could identify with that. There wasn't anything else to cloud that up. We kept a clear focus that what our mission was delivering emergency services to the community. That gives this environment of culture to thrive.
What's an average number of volunteers that you've had at the peak or at the low side?
Well, no matter how hard I tried, it was just kind of like I had this barrier. I couldn't break like about 28, and then you'd lose a couple, and so you're kind of hanging at about 22. And so it was just kind of for years and years. And so all of a sudden in the 2020s after COVID is the number started coming up.
Oh, wow.
And so, but in the summer of 2025, we were 42.
Wow.
What do you think the change was that made people want to do that?
We had, the quality of the training program, so we were putting more into building it. I got very fortunate is for 3 years, my son was half-time as the training officer, and he had totally invested in, and I'll just give him credit as you make it interesting and with the right motive, people show up. People want to do it. And so the whole participation, if you keep your drill, number one, you keep the drill focused and so that they know what they're going to get out of it. And so you've got it objectives of what you want to train, what you want them to learn, and then they get to hear about it, then they get to see it, then they get to go do it.
Yeah.
And so we kind of go through that training aspect where they get their opportunity to do the hands-on, and this is interesting, and it's fun, and I see where it fits into what skill sets I need, and their buy-in was like, we're in. We love this.
That's cool.
Do you think during COVID, a lot of people took those second homes and decided to live here during that time, during the COVID virus, and then stayed here? And I know a couple of those guys that have moved here recently that are on the volunteer program. So do you think, kind of trying to connect it in my head, the people that are moving here that sometimes have a little more time and a little more resources to give back, does that have something to do with it?
Absolutely does. Yeah. But remember what I said, busy people are the best volunteers. But in those folks, whether they're kind of in retirement or not, but they've got their priorities and what they want to do with their life, but that investing in the community is what they're interested in. And so, whether it's a give back or I want to initiate and take ownership and be part of the Manson legacy, there's that too.
I love that,
That's
Manson
cool.
legacy.
Well, it sounds like there is great leadership.
Yeah,
and that's
for sure.
what I think, that's why people buy in and stay.
All right, this next, I'm curious about this because I had not heard of this, and maybe I should have. The fire snow system.
Oh, you missed that. Huh?
I missed that somewhere. One of the most fascinating chapters of your story is the development of the fire snow aerial foam system. Where did that idea come from?
We were out on a fire, so we were introducing using foam in our operation. We were all of a sudden far more productive with what we were doing. So foam, and we're using it, if you can use foam at about a 0.1%, so that you use that much water at about a 0.1% foam. Water has a resistance. It can be hard. A touch of, in the Dawn commercial where they put the drop in there, and all of a sudden it's exactly what happens. And we're using that to break down the surface tension of water, so that it can penetrate. Because if you go put water with a surface tension on a fire, so in the research we were figuring out that if you're a firefighter in a structure fire, that 90 to 95% of all the water he's using is wasted, is what's going on the floor. And so there's that 5 to 10 part that's actually being vaporized, and the vaporization is actually robbing the BTUs out of the fire chemical reaction. And so the whole process of how you do it, when you just add a little bit of foam, you can make your water penetrate and stop the vaporization of the fuel and vaporize the water. You put the fire out. And in the wildfire scene is same thing. But if you go apply water to a vertical tree or home, it doesn't stick so well. But when you put it into a foam, and so we got into expanded foam. So we ran our operation, we were running at about 0.3%, and in still the fire department, we still run at about 0.3% in an expanded foam. So you get these, you think of the kid with blowing bubbles. Well, they're stabilizers. As they blow that bubble, and it floats out there, and it waits for a minute or so, and then it pops. Similarly, but they put more stabilizers in the fire foam so that it lasts longer. But if you look closely at that bubble, that when kids, it's draining off, it's the water on the bubble, and then you'll see, as you can see, the water kind of drain off of it. Same thing. What we were doing in our research and development is the size of the bubble was really important. So as you put in natural aspiration, as you would push that through a screen as to what size of the bubble it would create. And so we worked on, to get the right size of screen, to work in the shape of that screen and all that, so that we could deliver that at what pressure, so that we adapted a system that could be used for a helicopter, and it wasn't being done anywhere else. So this gave us an opportunity, and so we took that system on the road. We patented, trademarked the name Fire Snow. I wouldn't advise anybody, it's venture capital, and it was, I had these ideas that if I go prove this, then I will have arrived. It was wrong.
Yeah.
You have to prove it over and over and over and over and over, and you have all these, every fire you would go to, you would have these great successes with it. It's kind of like, but we had a pilot we were working with, and so our first year we were on the road, we were down in Southern California at Hemet, which was tanker town. They used air tankers more than any place else in the world, come out of there. And then the second year we got with a different company, and we worked out of Paso Robles, California, so up in the valley. And it was a great location. We had a great year. We worked with a company, and this company saw the opportunity. And that was part of it, is the first company we worked with. The purpose of that is to get the helicopter in the air so that we get hours on the helicopter. And the second guy was, we're not done marketing until that thing's in the air too. And so he's kind of like, he saw this opportunity. His name was Scott Baker. No relation, we kind of called each other cousin, but he was like, he was a 20,000 hour pilot, mostly long line. Most of his work had been in air cranes. So he was that best in the world external load long line pilot. And he saw the opportunity in us, and he lived it. So we had some great years that we could go out, chasing fire. One of his pilots, he relocated with us down in Paso Robles, and he was kind of like, the guy went because he was told, not because he wanted to. And he says, when you're a pilot, you do what the customer wants. If they want you to fly water, whether that puts a fire out or not, you go fly water because that's what the customer wants and you're just happy to do it. He says, I didn't really want to learn something new. But he got out on a fire and he grabbed our system. He was in there and he says, I got to do something with a helicopter putting out a fire that I've never ever done before. And so he's kind of like, this is cool. This is a opportunity. So he's in there. So now all of a sudden his buy-in went up about 10 degrees, and so he was like, I'm in. I want to work with this thing. This guy, he'd been in logging, and so these loggers with helicopter loggers, they're flying close to the ground a lot. Their skill set is higher. If they live 3 weeks, they're good to go. If they're gonna bite it, they're gonna bite it soon. But he had years of logging, and so he's kind of like, I get to do something that nobody else can do.
Right.
So that buy-in to what we were doing, using expanded foam and putting fires out, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, this thing's cool. This is and you think that, okay, you made that fire, and that's kind of, the word's got to get. And it was just
So you started it here,
yes.
and you guys developed.
And so we got to. I'll give some credit. Is one of my older brothers, John, was an aircraft mechanic. Hey, and so I pulled him into this thing, and so we were co-inventors on that. Wow. So he brought the aviation side, I took the fire side into it, into what we ended up creating. And there's another generation of it that needs to be made.
So you took it to a certain point, and essentially, like you were saying, when you got it, eventually patenting that system, but then realizing that to get it mainstream or to sell it at any scale takes more money, a lot of venture capital to develop a product at that level.
So the guy who was the head of all aviation in the fire service out of Boise. Now Boise is the aviation capital of the world. And so whether it's Department of Interior or Forest Service, they work together, and this was the number one guy. He retired, and he grabs me at a conference and says, you and I need to go for a drive. Now he was, at that time, he was working for Erickson Air Crane. And so Erickson Air Crane, when they developed their bucket system on that air crane, they became the best platform, because you got a crane and you can put 3,000 or 4,000 gallons of water inside this bucket, and you can fly sideways, and you can open that bucket and just, you could have a 15-foot wide band, or you could fly straight, or you could do a whole lot of things with it. And so they developed their system. He says, this is the best platform in the world. And it took us 10 years to earn their market share.
Yeah, just to get the buy-in.
Yeah.
Just to get that is that
Confidence.
you're the best.
Is there other products like that
No.
deviated?
No. And
That's
so
what you mean
thing
by
is, so he was from that thing when he was marketing, he went back to Erickson and he says, hey, you need to watch this thing, because what these guys got, they're going to run circles around you someday. And we didn't, because we ran out of money. Yeah. It was just time to pull the pin. So about 2000, we said we can't carry it any farther.
You had mentioned that Scott, your quasi-cousin that was the pilot, passed away in '98. How did that affect the future of your...
Oh, it was devastating to lose Scott, because now, he had been the one guy who really, he was respected in the Cal Fire, We watched on one day as we were kind of hanging out at the shop. Well, it was a stormy day, but he was going to go fly concrete. And so he was going to use the concrete bucket up in the Sierras, and so they were going to have to do this thing. Well, there was a big thunderstorm coming in, and they said, when you're coming in, the electrical generation off the rotors is just get away from that bucket. And, they had 3-foot long arcs coming off as they're coming in to put that in. It's like, you're done, get out of here. We don't want to see you again. We're not doing that. There's too much electricity up there in that big generator. in the sky that you're bringing in. He said, no, we're not going to get anybody hurt, so you get out of here. And so incoming, and his wife was in the shop, and so she just, you were able to call the local ranger district of Cal Fire, and said, yep. Their relationship was so good that the secretary that answered the phone tied up that helicopter. Didn't even have to go up through the hierarchies as, we know we're getting pounded. Yep, we need you. So they tied that up when we were flying. And we got to go on some of those things and work on some of those fires, and it was really pretty interesting. But to be that highly respected in the industry, well, we came up and we brought it up into Washington in '98. And we were first flying up in the Methow. And so along the Methow River, and then DNR had a fire, and this helicopter needed to go, and the pilot, he says, well, your incoming pilot, does he know how to fly external load? And I said, yeah. Well, what's his name? Scott Baker. And this guy, and his voice broke. Scott Baker? He's coming here? Well, come to find out later, Scott had fired that guy, in those things. So it was really funny that it's kind of like they, he knew of him. He knew of him real well. And it's kind of like, the big guy's coming here. And it's kind of like, he took the DNR guy and says, you'll do just fine.
Oh, that's funny.
What do you think would have happened if a second generation had been built?
I think I'd be changing how we're fighting fire. But we tried to do a stock offering to get this thing going, and so then we weren't able to open that. But an accountant says you need 1.4 million to get this thing going, and I think that would not have been, because we needed to get into this other generation to do that. Now, it was interesting when Scott was killed, and we went down there for the funeral service, and so
was he killed in a crash?
Yes, and it was just there's too many moving parts, and it was a catastrophic failure, and he was moving fast because he was trying to get back to the pad, and he was flying over the lake, and as they say, water becomes concrete when you hit it too hard, and it just tore the helicopter apart. But we went down there for the service. Well, his Army buddy, and so he was in the 1st Cavalry, and so his buddy, and he nicknamed that buddy Fat Albert. He wasn't fat. It was just his nickname. And it was this guy, but he had, he was flying what they call a K-Max, and he was the first guy to crash a K-Max. The aircraft had been in for maintenance, and so there's this pin that holds that rotor head on, and they didn't secure, so it was the mechanic's fault. He didn't safety that pin in, and that pin wiggled out. What had happened is now in a K-Max, the cables are inside the rotor blades, and so how you pull on them puts the pitch on there, and so they're internally controlled, and so then they go through this mast. Well, the pin coming out crimped on that thing, so he lost control.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of like, I got nothing on the stick, so all I got is throttle now. So you decreased your throttle and you're coming down, and
you just
it's kind of like, this is going to hurt. And he says, because the rotors exploded as soon as they hit the trees that he settled in. Turned the motor off, opened the hatch, walked out. But he and Scott were best buddies, and what I didn't know was they were planning on buying one of those aircraft, and they says, we wanted to do fire snow. So, that second generation just almost happened with 2 pilots that were going to be, they didn't want anybody telling them what to do. They were senior in their field, and they wanted to do what they wanted, and that was what they wanted.
Well, it sounds like you put a lot of time and energy and thought and brain power and money into it. It's interesting to me. Are you surprised that there hasn't been evolution in somewhere, in 20 years that somebody would have figured out, maybe not that, but have they figured out other systems besides just the water and the tartar?
I saw somebody who was coming out with something that looked similar. But when we did the patent, so you have to do renewals on patent. So you buy your 17 years, well, you got to do 3 renewals in the middle of that. So governments kind of, they want their, to keep your patent. But a patent isn't worth the paper it's printed on until it has been gone through court and you've won. If somebody wants to do intruding on your patent, that's when your patent then becomes worth something. And so we never had a legal battle. I mean, it was a great idea, but everybody's kind of waiting to watch to see if how successful we were, whether they wanted to invest, and they just didn't.
Well, we can get you on Shark Tank after this
that might be
podcast
fun.
and get you raising some capital
Yeah.
again. Maybe that's what you'll do in retirement. You'll be an inventor and take it off.
Don't tell my wife.
Well, speaking of wife, happy 47th wedding anniversary today, the day we're taping this.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
That is an accomplishment, as always, and congrats. 40 years in fire service means late nights, missed dinners, pagers going off, issues. What's your wife must be a saint.
I remember a Thanksgiving. Sat down, one bite. Got one bite. The tones go off, you go. And it was out toward Chelan Boulevard, and it's Thanksgiving morning, and or afternoon, somebody is just burning yard debris, and we always get these phone calls from the people on the South Shore.
About the North Shore.
About us on this side. Hey, that house is on fire. The house wasn't on fire. They were, it was an attended burn. So it was kind of like, I walked away from Thanksgiving dinner what happened, people on the Manson side of the North Shore, they look at the South Shore, see the thing, so it's kind of this, everybody reports what they see across the lake. And I only ever had one of those really legitimate, we would have, it was always, hey, there's a house on fire. And then there was this one time, there must be a brush pile, and it was early morning hours. So we go rolling out there. No, it was a house fire. It was the real thing, and so.
Better safe than sorry, right?
It was kind of like, that one was get on it, and because there's early morning hours, and
Yeah.
Well, describe Melody. Describe what kind of support she has given you over 40 years and 47 years of marriage.
With 47 years of marriage, so she followed me to Manson to take part of this life up here. As my mom passed in 1984, then it was expected that Melody was going to fill those shoes as the company secretary, and so that But when we were doing bees, it was like had to sleep in the day, and then in the afternoon, you get up to kind of start thinking about your evening, and you're going to try to be on the road by 6 or 7 at the very latest in the evening, as you'd start to work. But you had to contact all these farmers and make your list, and so that she tried to prepare that list. So she was my right hand to get that list done for me, so that we could get out the door and go make the night. In harvest and in apples, she was the bin checker, and we had her on tractor, and so it was kind of like you're part of the again, my right hand to make things happen.
Yeah.
And as being a fireman, as she had the good graces to say, when I walk out on a meal or a family event, that I had understanding,
Yeah.
And
That's cool.
Really appreciate that, and to have you can't do emergency services without support of the family.
It goes back to your priorities with your people, right?
Yeah.
So that's, 47 years in today's world, at least, is an accomplishment that is rare, and it should be admired. What do you think it takes to build a marriage and keep a marriage? for that long?
It takes commitment, and it takes, is getting out of the marriage is never an option. So you're going to work through the hard times. We went to counseling. It was the best thing we ever did. Mm-hmm. And so is to say that you can make it without hardship, that's unrealistic.
Yeah.
Your hardship is going to happen. How you work through the hardship and to become a better person and to have a much better marriage, that takes work.
Communication,
yeah,
transparency. Well, she sounds like a true partner in every sense for you.
So, she was not just the stay-at-home mom, but that's what role pretty much most of the time that she was the stay-at-home mom, but she was the company partner, and it made things, to what I couldn't get done myself is, to help on that business side of things.
Tell us about your kids.
3 wonderful kids. My 3 kids are my best friends.
That's awesome.
That's, if you kind of realize that is that how we were raising them. We were very fortunate. Now, daughter Des, she couldn't wait to get out of the house, during high school and get on with life in the world. And she had years out in the mission field, and then they was a group of them. She was here for a few years, and they went to St. Augustine, Florida. 15 years in St. Augustine, and last May, I'm going back to Washington, and she lived with us for 8 or 9 months, and she just in end of January, moved over to Seattle, and now has job into that part. But she kind of put her life on hold because my wife's having problems with her foot. She had her ankle replaced, and so then that device has moved, so she's got to have it replaced again. So they're trying to figure out what the fix is, but she should be able to walk normal after that gets fixed, and so we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, hoping the best for that.
But is what Des put her life on hold, to help us through those last several months. Love her to pieces. Rainer living right here in town, and he's just been fantastic, in his 3 years as the training officer. We kind of had to think about it after the fact. We never butted heads over anything, as that we were working side by side, and we never disagreed.
That's cool.
And so it was like, this part of carrying on is to working on what we were doing. And then the last one, Reagan, who everybody knows as Bubba, well, he went and did 2 degrees in undergrad, and then he went on to Master's of Divinity, became a pastor.
Oh, wow.
There was some issues there, so he went and got out of that, and he went to bartending school, got his bartender. He's been doing a couple other things, and now he's finishing a master's in accounting. So he's going to be an accountant. But he's possibly going back to pastoring again. Well, so he's doing well.
That's awesome. How old are your kids now?
So
roughly?
38, 40, and 43.
Yeah. Well, I worked with my dad my whole adult life, basically, in various things, from farming to real estate and you name it. We did a lot of stuff, and it was one of the best times. So it's I know what you mean by being, he was my best friend. So it's a cool thing.
That's it's the one thing that we could long for, is that our kids are our best friend. So I'm very, very blessed with my kids as my best friend.
Well, you're now recently going to be retiring, and
I started in July of '86. So my birthday is July, and so I started really close to my birthday, and so that 40 years hits that month, and so that's kind of like, I had chosen that date, but I didn't really want to do that date. I was kind of like, maybe if I could add a couple more years, but under circumstances, I am going to retire July 31st, 2026.
So I have two questions. What do you think you're going to miss most about the career, and what are you looking forward to doing next?
Okay. I will miss the people.
Yeah.
Half the people in Manson have my cell number.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to use it, you know, and then back when we had the, you know, landline, is that they would call my wife and say, well, he's not here, but, or can I burn? And they would try to get permission from her so that they could do a burn.
Doesn't work that way?
Yeah, that didn't work out. But, you know, it really is because I focused to deliver services, emergency services, that I will miss that, because that's been what I value. I mean, I have hundreds of great memories. I have hundreds of hurtful memories, but the grateful memories are, you know, they'll still, we choose to let those outweigh the bad.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a huge benefit in getting to do what I've done. So that's that is number one.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to do next? What are you looking forward to?
Not working. I also, you know, I've developed some tools that I use for administration. I caught a guy. He did some program for the Washington Fire Commissioners about financial modeling. Well, he had this canned program, and all you do is you put your data into that thing. And I like that, but I want to learn that. So I started taking Excel classes, and then I put in time in. And there was this one function that I just couldn't figure out. And I emailed Bill, and I said, Bill, I'm doing this thing, and they said, well, where's my model? And so he came back. I sent over what I was working on, and he kind of came back in all caps and said, he is not happy. So then I called him up, and this is, so I like what you did, Bill. I'm trying to duplicate it. And he said, oh my God, that's a lot of work. Here you go. I'll give you this function that he hadn't given to anybody else. And he says, don't feel bad. He says, it took me 2 years to figure out this one function. So it was that, but it was in a depreciation schedule as to how it would add the multiplier with the, and so it was just a wonderful function, but there was no way to duplicate it any other way, but it took him 2 years to figure it out. So, and he kind of was the master level in there. So I've got tools that I think I could, you know, so probably hang out the consultant shingle, and
That's cool.
And you know, because there's still things to be done.
Yeah.
And I've got a ton of people across the state of Washington that, you know, really respect to what we've built here in Manson. So we're recognized. I would like to help somebody else to help carry that on and to build it into another community. So that's kind of the what's next, is to do a little consulting, do some fishing. Nice. You know, in the last few years, I have not been out on Lake Chelan near enough. So it's got to be very intentful to go fishing, go hiking, go enjoy the
perfect year to start.
There you go. Well, we've been at it a bit. I want to thank you for all the service.
Thank you so much.
Your friendship, and this town owes you a debt of gratitude, my friend, and your family. And a happy anniversary. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. You know, it was kind of like I was very excited about when you invited me. It's like, oh, there are some things. And then I started putting notes together, and then I couldn't stop writing. So you know, it kind of got a little carried away in there. But
perfect.
I love
That's
it.
why we call it unscripted, because we all have a story, and you have a good one, my friend.
I got to throw one more in.
You got it.
Yeah,
you know,
please.
So my dad's sister, the youngest one, Vera.
Okay.
And here, so, well, okay, so Manson Fire is at the end of 2025, that's 75 years. So it started in 50, and so we've been in operation for 75 years. In 75 years, we've had 7 chiefs. And so who was chief when you were growing up? Who do you remember?
I don't know if I do.
So but anyway,
Yeah.
is of those, so the first chief, Harold Hayhurst, he wasn't my uncle, but after 1 year, he resigned and ran away with Vera and became my uncle.
Oh,
Yeah. So is
cute.
that, and then JV, who is my dad's other sister, Oral, and so he came in and was fire chief from 51 through 59. And so, but so you know how the shirt tail relations work in Manson?
Yeah.
And so of the 6 previous chiefs, I'm related to 5 of them.
That's
wow,
crazy.
that's crazy.
So I mean, my dad wasn't in, but I still am very connected, and so that was a piece
That's
of that
funny.
history. So I'll leave you with that one to say
That's really cool.
Well, you got to be careful. Everybody's kind of related to everybody.
it's not a zip code; it's a gene pool number.
Another way to look at it. All right. Well, thanks for everything. All right, we're signing off from Small Towns Unscripted one more time.